Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would talk about this topic overall that ended up somewhat piquing my interest. I was reviewing overall certain videos when it came down to it about this possible topic. And of course, you know that most of the videos or most of the channels that I tend to end up reviewing on this channel, they usually tend to be a part of new media or that of the LDBC. Well, of course, overall, pretty much what I guess what was going to happen pretty much looks like it's about to happen. And basically, what am I talking about? Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis, it looks like more than likely that his next fight is going to be against, I believe, fellow Mayweather promotional fighter Rolly Romero, or whatever the hell the man's name overall is. I believe Rolly Romero that he is one of the regular champions at 135, meaning that he has one of the regular belts, not one of the official belts. And apparently, the WBA, I believe, has ordered this fight. And just like I said recently with Mr. Ryan Garcia, at least with the video overall that I am going to post, just like I asked with Mr. Ryan Garcia, when is he going to get in the ring with those real deal fighters? The same question has to be asked with Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis. And Gervonta Tank Davis, because of his talent level, not only that, and of course a certain amount of people may say, well, there's going to be a certain amount of standards against him as well because he's a black fighter. You can maybe allege that if you want to, but at the end of the day, it's like this. Gervonta Tank Davis is not facing the creme de la creme. It just is what it is. Your last couple of fights have pretty much been against low-tier competition. It just is what it is. Your last fight, I believe, was against Isaac Pitbull Cruz. There's a reason why those pay-per-view numbers tanked. And of course, these certain channels, they wanted to bitch, moan, and complain about it. But at the end of the day, the pay-per-view numbers don't lie. Pay-per-view numbers usually only do really well if someone is particularly interested in that matchup. If they either A, believe that they're just watching a fighter that, you believe that you just have to see in the moment because they're so great. But even then, the matchup is still going to have to be looked at as somewhat as competitive. Like when Canelo Alvarez fought Danny Jacobs and Sergey Kovalev overall, and especially recently just Caleb Plant, all those views, I believe, did decently well. But when you take a look at Gervonta Tank Davis within this last couple of fights, the pay-per-view numbers keep dwindling down and down and down. And the reason why that is because, dude, no one wants to see you fight Isaac Pitbull Cruz. No one wants to see you face, or the majority of people don't want to see you face Mario Barrios. Now, I personally did get that fight because I thought it was at least somewhat interesting to see how Gervonta Tank Davis will perform at a higher weight class, but no one really thought that Mario Barrios actually had a legitimate chance. At least not a super, super big one. It just is what it is. That's why I predicted Gervonta Tank Davis to win that fight and more than likely knock him out, and I was 100% correct. It just is what it is. And that wasn't really a hard fight to predict because you could tell that Mario Barrios, he just has too many holes in his game. And apparently the next opponent that Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis is going to face, of course, is Mr. Rolly Romero. And this might be actually the easiest fight that Gervonta Tank Davis has had within his past several fights. I mean, it just is what it is. And I like Gervonta Tank Davis. I think that Gervonta Tank Davis is a phenomenal talent, both athletically, both with his boxing IQ and also, with his boxing skill set. But I cannot put Gervonta Tank Davis very high on my pound-for-pound list until I actually see him in the ring with some of these elite guys. And I'm sorry, but no one gives a shit about Gervonta Tank Davis facing Rolly Romero. Now, of course, people are basically trying to excuse this fight and basically saying, oh, well, Rolly Romero, when it comes down to he's a fellow Mayweather fighter, they have a background and all sort of stuff. They may be able to do maybe 200 to 300,000 pay-per-view buys, maybe if they're lucky. If Rolly Romero is able to talk himself up and overall is able to somehow pull some sort of Conor McGregor charisma out of this when it comes down to it, maybe he can pull that off all in all. And then maybe, they can somewhat have a decently popular pay-per-view. I don't think it's going to do anything over 300,000 pay-per-view buys. To be quite honest with you, I doubt that it'll probably even do that much. When you take a look at Rolly Romero, yes, he's entertaining to watch when it comes down to it. If you're interested in someone who has a lot of power but may not be that highly skilled. But Rolly Romero against any elite fighter, he has no chance to beat them. No chance. He has horrible footwork, horrible defense, horrible head movement. The only thing that Rolly Romero really has is power. It just is what it is. I mean, he's pretty much like the 135 version of Deontay Wilder, only not even good, not nearly as good as what Deontay Wilder is. Because even if you take a look at Deontay Wilder in the heavyweight division, he's someone that's 6'7". I believe he has about an 81 to 82 to 83 inch reach, somewhere around there. And on top of that, he has a right hand that can knock anyone out at any time. So even if you're highly skilled against him like a Tyson Fury, or maybe someone else in that division who could be decently skilled, Deontay Wilder at least has enough skill when it comes down to it. He also all in all has enough power and enough get up and go when it comes down to it and heart to kind of compete with those other guys. Rolly Romero has no chance to beat Gervonta Tank Davis, even if he hits him with his best shot. Gervonta Tank Davis has an extremely good chin when it comes down to it. And Gervonta Tank Davis, unless he completely goes in here completely underestimating Rolly Romero, even if he does, I don't see overall how Gervonta Tank Davis loses this fight. And that's not me saying all in all that I want him to lose the fight. But if Gervonta Tank Davis is going to start to be ranked as one of those top fighters in the world, it's time for you to really get in the ring with some of the big boys. Vasily Lomachenko, Devin Haney, Oscar Valdez, Shakur Stevenson. One of those guys next. This dude, all in all has been facing B and C grade competition the majority of his career. It just is what it is. And I like Gervonta Tank Davis. I think that he even has a chance to maybe eventually become the future #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the whole sport of boxing. But this is not a fight that anyone wants to see. It just is what it is. And that's why, in my opinion, more than likely, it could do decent on pay-per-views. It may be better than what his last one was because not a lot of people really knew who Isaac Pitbull Cruz was, at least in terms of the casual boxing fan. Now, more casual boxing fans, they probably know who Mr. Rolly Romero is when it comes down to it. But like I said, Mr. Rolly Romero, maybe the pay-per-view could do good just because of the storyline and just because Rolly Romero, he talks so much shit. But if you actually, overall, for the people that truly know how skilled Rolly Romero is, and he's not that skilled at all when it comes down to it, everyone pretty much knows that this is pretty much going to be another snoozer. It just is what it is. Sure, does Rolly Romero have a lot of power? Sure, he does. Does Gervonta Tank Davis bring the fireworks? Yes, he does. But what does it really matter if your opponent has almost a 0% chance against you? At least when Canelo, and these channels, we all know how they love to criticize Canelo. And this is how you know that they know that Canelo is on another level. Because no matter what opponent he faces, even if it's an undefeated champion, overall, like a Caleb Plant or Billy Joe Saunders, someone all in all that looks like they have legitimate pedigree, they're never happy with one of those fights. But at least those fighters, I gave about a 30% chance. Rolly Romero has about a 5% chance in this fight. That's all he has. Sure, he's a little bit taller overall than Gervonta Tank Davis. Sure, he may even be a little bit bigger. But what does that really mean? We all know that Gervonta Tank Davis, that he has a very big stature. He's a person that can fit at 135, possibly even 140, no problem. He's a very heavily built 5'6/5'7". Sure, he's not the tallest of fighters, but what does that really mean if you're not facing a fighter that is anywhere near your skill set? It just is what it is. This is not a dude that, in my opinion, Rolly Romero, that's going to beat any of the elite guys. I don't even think Rolly Romero would last overall with Ryan Garcia. It just is what it is. To be honest with you, I would be shocked overall if Rolly Romero were even 100% able to beat Isaac Pitbull Cruz. It just is what it is. Not a lot of people, in my opinion, are probably going to want to see this fight. I would not be surprised if the pay-per-view did better than what it did last time, just because Rolly, like I said, he seems to have some sort of charisma. He seems to talk a lot of shit when it comes down to it. Some people may be interested in the storyline or to see Gervonta Tank Davis pretty much knock his head off. But when it comes down to it, like I said, there's not going to be a whole lot of sales, at least compared to other people out there. Because like I said, not a lot of people really want to see this fight because this is not a competitive fight. You're facing a dude that has never even been a legitimate champion. Now, sure, he's a regular champion, but what does that really say? Is a regular champion really someone that you really need to have on your resume? It just is what it is. Like I said, Canelo Alvarez, for example, is actually beating legitimate, unified, and pedigree champions. This dude, Gervonta Tank Davis, he's defeating guys within his last couple of fights that have never even won a belt in their career or overall won the regular titles and is not even one of the top 5 guys in their own division. And Dante's Boxing Nation and some of these other channels have literally tried to make the debate overall that Isaac Pitbull Cruz or that all in all that, some of the guys that Gervonta Tank Davis is facing is better competition than Canelo Alvarez. What type of an idiotic statement overall is that? But we all know that these channels, that they have a narrative to play out. They're not as stupid as they allege, but it is what it is. But like I said, overall, in my opinion, this is not a good fight. But it is what it is. And that's why, in my opinion, it's probably not going to do very well in the pay-per-view numbers. And you're going to see a certain amount of these channels bitch, moan, and complain more than likely. Oh, well, it was a good event and all this sort of stuff. It's only a good event overall if fans see it overall as a decently competitive fight. And at the current moment in time, no one sees this as a competitive fight, whether they love him or hate him. People hated Floyd Mayweather Jr., but they would buy each and every single one of his fights because intuitively they knew the majority of the time it was decently competitive. And it's the same thing with Canelo Alvarez. That's why even these guys, they claim to hate Canelo Alvarez so badly. but they'll buy every single one of his pay-per-views because they know that the fights are decent, quality. Gervonta Tank Davis, a lot of people ain't going to buy this shit. A lot of people are not going to buy Rolly Romero versus Gervonta Tank Davis because it's pretty much already concluded. It just is what it is. And this is not, this is not overall, another situation, in my opinion, where it's a George Kambosos versus Teofimo Lopez fight. That was a different situation. Sure, Teofimo was decently favored, but we all knew that George Kambosos was at least a dangerous mandatory. This is basically Gervonta Tank Davis going up against a boxer that is almost an amateur. I mean, Rolly Romero, like I said, yes, he has a lot of power, but who's he going to beat out there that's elite? He's not going to beat any of them. It just is what it is. Can Rolly Romero even beat a Gary Russell Jr.? Shit, can Rolly Romero even beat a Mark Magsayo? I'm not even sure if he can beat that dude. It is what it is if they were the same size. Maybe he could beat some of those lighter weight guys just because he has the stature and power. But if he faces someone his own same size that has a decent skill set, he's not going to beat any of those guys. It just is what it is. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see what happens.